Just last week, our governor launched a creative program for getting Kentuckians back to work. We now offer a $1,500 signing bonus for those who get a job in the next 30 days. I'm not surprised at all, mind you. In fact, I called it a year ago when I said our unemployment benefits were far too generous for the cost of living in Kentucky. Even today, Kentuckians can earn 1.5 more times in income on unemployment than they can working a full-time minimum wage job. It's no surprise we have to offer a carrot to get our Kentuckians back to work. Meanwhile, President Biden is excitedly announcing that they have tentatively reached a deal on yet another stimulus package. This new package, combined with the old ones, means that we have spent nearly $5 trillion in fiscal stimulus. Now, let's compare this to FDR's historic New Deal, which brought us from the Great Depression. We have spent $5 trillion. In today's dollars, FDR would have spent $700 billion. Now, those numbers alone may seem shocking, but I think if you knew the economic data behind it, they would seem even more shocking. So here's the skinny. The COVID pandemic hurt like hell, but only for a short amount of time. In fact, the gross domestic product from all of 2020 for the US only declined 3.5%. It rebounded more than 6% in quarter one of this year, and economists are projecting that the 2021 US GDP over the year will actually increase by about 9%. Now, let's compare that to the GDP during the Great Depression. During the Great Depression, the US's GDP declined by 10%, not one, not two, but 3 years in a row. That means by the end of the Great Depression, GDP had been sliced by nearly 1/3. Let's move on to unemployment, right? That's an issue. We're all unemployed. Well, would it surprise you to know that the unemployment rate in May was 5.5%? And to put that into context, the average unemployment rate in the US over time is 5.7%. You heard me right. We have a growing economy and unemployment that is actually lower than the all-time average. Yet, we still have progressives saying we have not done enough on the fiscal stimulus side. So what the hell is going on? Full disclosure, on a scale of Rand Paul to Bernie Sanders, I'm going to slide a little bit more on the Rand Paul side, but I'm always open to hearing and understanding others' opinions and viewpoints. Let's take Janet Yellen, for example, a very accomplished, very intelligent economist, now Treasury Secretary. She was in front of Congress last week pleading with them to raise the debt ceiling and saying that if they didn't do so, it could precipitate another financial crisis. How can economists of Janet Yellen's stature truly disregard the rising debt ceiling? Well, the best analogy I have heard is you compare it to a leaking roof. So let's pretend that your house has a leaking roof. It's your shelter, it protects your family, and it is in dire need of repair. We would potentially recommend that you take out a home equity line of credit to fix the big $10,000 roof, because you may not be able to cash flow that expense, but you can service the debt. You can pay the ongoing interest to repair the roof. This is a common argument by progressives. The US should use her full weight to access money and debt at very low interest rates to solve the immediate crisis. Cecilia Rouse is a professor of econ at Princeton University. She's also the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors to the White House, and she agrees with this sentiment. She says it's not just big government for big government's sakes. In fact, the council did extensive research into what role public investment can make into a growing economy, and they find empirical evidence that we will all be better off the more that we invest in things like infrastructure, climate change, and human capital. Okay, I agree. In times of crisis, it does make sense to tap into debt to save the proverbial house. And I do think swift fiscal spending did help us rebound out of this pandemic and recession much faster than we would have without it. But the question becomes, when is enough enough? The issue isn't massive government spending to address a crisis. I mean, hello, the first stimulus package actually came from a Republican administration. No, you see, the issue is that we never pay back the debt. Go back to the house analogy. If I had recommended you take out a home equity line to repair the roof in a time of crisis, the follow-up recommendation would have been a plan to pay back down that debt. Now, if you look at the history of the US, there has only been one time ever that we were a debt-free country, and it only lasted for a year, and it was in 1835. In fact, if you look back at the last 20 years, our percentage of debt to GDP ratio has simply grown. So, no, I don't disagree that we can, access debt to meet an immediate crisis. My issue is that argument becomes moot if we as a government never recognize that during the good times, we have to actually start paying back the debt. That's it for this week. This is Jeannie Fisher, the 401k Lady.